Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. The seventh neural sync failed with a violent pulse of static. Lights flickered. The interface went dark. Enzar slammed his four-fingered fist against the console rail. "Again!" he barked, his gill-like neck slits fluttering with frustration. Behind him, the observation deck vibrated faintly. Not from error, but from presence. Outside the glass, it waited. The Shangdi. Not pulsing, not moving, just watching. Signal rejected. Neural bridge collapsed. Again. A silence followed. Not the quiet of failure. The quiet of something thinking. Something alive. The human-made superstructure stretched over 40 kilometers, an obsidian behemoth tangled in rings of magnetic defense lattices and interwoven with cables thick as cruisers. Drones swarmed its surface, Confederation drones, probing, scanning, failing. And surrounding it were the ships of the Confed's Science Division, satellites, medical barges, and armed escorts, all tethered to the perimeter like vultures circling a frozen giant. Inside the bridge of the main science vessel, Drekor stared through the viewport. There was something unsettling in the stillness, not silence, but restraint, as if the ship was choosing not to speak. His skin was cobalt blue, faintly luminescent. His facial features were sharp, expression unreadable but not cold. The ridges along his jaw vibrated faintly, as the same phrase echoed again from the comms, every word identical, yet somehow different. Awaiting designated command source. Authentication. Homo sapiens. It was the 14th time in the last hour, the 100th attempt since the latest campaign began. The voice wasn't mechanical, not entirely. There was modulation, inflection, desperation. Drekor turned from the viewport and walked slowly toward the center table where the rest of the team reviewed failure logs. As he approached, one of the junior xenogeneticists, Farrell, a short, hunched, fur-covered Oscari, clicked his teeth in annoyance. "It's not alive. It's code. We've thrown every species' DNA at it, every linguistic model, every neural mimicry. It won't open. It won't even blink." Behind him, the phrase echoed again. Awaiting designated command source. Authentication. Homo sapiens. This time the end carried a sharp, upward tone, almost pleading. The table buzzed with silent tension. The Shangdi wasn't reacting to power surges or electromagnetic pulses. It was waiting. And it had been waiting for over 3,000 years. Drekor's eyes drifted down to the datapad he held. The report had been misfiled, forgotten, nearly discarded during the last update. It wasn't a headline. Unviable. Protocol Quarantine 6. He tapped it again, slowly, as the final line replayed in his mind. Biological unit, Homo sapiens. Status, stable. Cryopreserved. Stasis. Age, 3,332 galactic standard years. He didn't speak. The weight of the information clutched his chest. "Commander Drekor." Enzar's voice cut across the room. He blinked, nodded slowly, and tucked the pad away. "Continue the next set. I'll review the quantum sync logs." But he didn't go to the console. He turned to the lift. Across the stars, in the spiral council chambers of the Confederation, a war was being waged, not with weapons, but with voices. The main chamber, carved into a hollowed asteroid that orbited the galactic core, thrummed with overlapping languages, gestures, and cultural signals. The air shimmered with heated debates, the floor divided into color-coded tiers where the delegations of over 60 species shouted, motioned, and threatened in synchronized chaos. Above each delegation, ceremonial light trees hovered, symbols of age-old treaties and broken wars. They pulsed in colors that didn't exist in any known spectrum, reacting to shifts in political mood. High Chancellor Fex Thor of the Kravun sat atop the central dais. His face was layered in bone armor, his 4 eyes flicking between ambassadors. His silence was thunderous, a signal for escalation. "The artifact must be dismantled," thundered Arch-General Lorvac of the Velkari Combine, a reptilian giant whose voice carried seismic authority. "You let that thing wake, and every archive from the Descent era becomes prophecy. They turned worlds to glass. They engineered extinction." A delegation of softer, more slender beings, the Lissari, waved their palms in a counter gesture. That was their past, not this vessel. This one could heal. "False myths," barked Lorvac. A projection filled the chamber. Dozens of planetary systems appeared, each displayed in holographic relief, each a shade of gray-brown, covered in swirling storms or blighted by radiation. One after the other. Arva Prime, Helion 6, Tyne's Reach. A female Lysari scientist, Advisor Kalane, stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but when the chamber silenced, it carried with unnatural clarity. "These worlds are dying. Our biological networks are collapsing faster than predicted. Atmospheric integrity is less than a generation from full breakdown. The Shangdi was designed to terraform on a planetary scale. Its activation could restore balance, or give us the blueprint to build our own systems. If we destroy it, we destroy our last shot," someone muttered. Fexthor stood. The chamber hushed instantly. His voice was low, precise. "The Council authorizes one final attempt at activation, 20 cycles. Then, disassembly begins. No exceptions." Murmurs rippled across the tiers. A species in the back tier, the Ikari, pale, long-necked beings with swirling ink-like eyes, rose to protest, but Fexthor raised a single clawed hand. Enough. The resolution passed. 20 cycles. After that, the Shangdi would be torn apart piece by piece, and its secrets lost forever. Back in orbit over Arcos 4, the final interface detached with a hiss of inertial gas. Tsarek slumped in his chair, exhaustion lining the folds of his translucent skull. "No resonance," he rasped. The core ignored everything. The science teams began shutting down equipment. Robotic arms retracted, cables slithered back into containment modules. Engineers muttered as they powered down sensor arrays. Drekor hadn't returned yet. No one noticed. Outside the observation bay, the Shangdi hovered motionless. But something subtle had changed. 3 of the closest drones, Confed property, had shifted positions without instruction. A 4th hovered still, then aligned itself with the Shangdi's curvature as if listening. A communications officer squinted at her monitor. "Did anyone authorize a formation drift?" No response. Below the Shangdi's outer hull, a ripple passed across its surface. Not light, mass. The plating flexed, adapted, then sealed again, like muscle beneath skin. Inside, deep in its dormant core, one voice repeated again, this time a whisper. "Awaiting. Designated. Command source. Authentication. Homo sapiens." There was weariness in it. Not failure, but waiting. A waiting that sounded like longing. For 3,000 years, the machine had not stopped asking. Not once. Not even in silence. As the last of the scientists packed their gear, Drekor stood alone in the ship's secondary command tier, reviewing the same line of text again and again on his pad. Biological unit, Homo sapiens. Status, stable, cryopreserved. Stasis, age, 3,332 galactic standard years. He didn't say a word, but his fingers moved, accessing a restricted channel he wasn't cleared to use. And with them, so did the fate of a galaxy. And with them, so did the fate of a galaxy. The containment cradle struck the deck with a muted thud. Hydraulic arms hissed, then withdrew. Frost spread in delicate webs across the cryopod surface, the last remnants of ancient stasis evaporating into the sterile air of Quarantine Facility 6. Above, Drekor stood at the observation rail, eyes fixed on the pod as medical drones locked it into place. No one spoke. The recovery team moved in silence, still unnerved since the shuttle's arrival. The facility was buried beneath a dead moon, its walls wrapped in thick radiation shielding and quantum dampeners. The lights hummed faintly, casting a sterile pallor over the group of alien specialists, each chosen not for rank, but for their stability. Yvonne, a stoic armored Jatari with slate-black scales and a mouth of retractable tendrils, stood at Drekor's side, arms crossed. "This unit is over 3 millennia out of time," he muttered. "What are you expecting it to do? Wake up and remember how to command a godship?" "Not remember," Drekor said. "Just be." Behind them, Varson, a lean Oltari with iridescent carapace plates and 6 multi-jointed limbs, adjusted the scanning rig, antennae twitching with nervous energy. "The pod's biolocks are human standard. We had to override with a phased ionic bypass. If this works, it'll be the first clean retrieval from the pre-fall epoch." "And if it doesn't?" asked Varro, the only silence keeper among the Tharn species, a tall, furless figure with a curved neck and black glass eyes that reflected nothing. Drekor said nothing. He simply descended the stairs to the floor below. With a final hiss, the cradle's top layer retracted. A rush of sterilized vapor escaped as the cryogenic shield folded inward. The figure inside was curled, pale, smaller than expected. Tubes withdrew from his spine, chest, and limbs. Medical systems flickered red, then green. A slow, audible heartbeat began to beep through the speakers. The humanoid form twitched, then coughed. The sound echoed like a weapon discharged in a silent chamber. His eyes opened, wide, lost, searching. He blinked against the harsh ceiling lights, skin glistening under residual frost. Lips cracked as he tried to form words. What came out was a rasping, broken sequence of phonemes. No translator engaged. Where am I? Drekor stepped forward slowly, hands open. "You're safe," he said, though the words weren't understood. The human's body tensed. His gaze snapped to the nearest drone, an angular, buzzing shape with no face. Then to Varson, whose 6 limbs and iridescent shell blurred in motion. He recoiled, breath rasping fast, eyes darting like an animal cornered. "Give him space," Drekor said. "All drones back." They obeyed. The human tried to sit, but failed. His muscles spasmed, one hand clawed at his temple. Beneath the skin, something glinted, metallic and complex, integrated into the bone above his ear. Implant detected. Biotech, early fusion class, but this architecture, no one replicates that anymore, Yvonne growled. Not even close. Varson stepped back, 2 of his limbs twitching involuntarily. This shouldn't exist, not anymore, not here. The human collapsed backward, gasping. His fingers brushed along his own forearm. Faint tattoos, barely visible, marked his skin in ancient ink. Stars. A line across his wrist, a ring of concentric circles over his shoulder, memory etched in flesh. Drekor motioned to one of the support medics. "Protein gel, hydration, keep it simple." A female assistant, a young Lissari with transparent skin and long bioluminescent hair, nodded and approached cautiously, offering a small dish. The human stared at it, then at her. He took the dish with shaking hands and began to eat in slow, cautious motions. He didn't speak again, but his eyes never stopped scanning the room. Later, once the human was asleep in a containment rest chamber, Drekor sat alone at the translator terminal. He played the audio logs on loop, those fragmented words the human had spoken. Ancient Earth Standard. Long dead. Phonemes lost to time, but not to the archives of the Shangdi. Drekor accessed Siren's dormant linguistic matrix and rerouted the old phonemic map to the facility's translator grid. He worked in silence for hours, slowly feeding the recovered fragments until they aligned. He taught the system to listen again. By the next rotation, the human was standing. Supported, but steady. Drekor approached him personally. No drones, no weapons. "My name is Drekor," he said carefully. The translator pinged. "Drekor." The human furrowed his brow, then nodded slowly. The next phase came quickly. The transport shuttle carrying the small group of scientists and the human ascended from the surface of the dead moon, curving into Arcos 4's orbital path. Ahead of them, the Shangdi waited. The human pressed against the viewport, jaws slack. No one told him what it was. He simply stared. As the shuttle entered the outer docking perimeter, the Shangdi responded. Lights ignited along its hull, cascading in sequence like neurons firing. Inside the vessel, systems activated without external input. A corridor opened. A pulse traveled through the dormant mainframe. The first signal Siren received in over 3,000 years was biological. Human. Live. Inside perimeter. The docking ramp extended. The human took slow steps onto the cold metallic floor of the Shangdi. As soon as his foot made contact, light followed. A circle formed around him, golden, warm, shifting. The air shimmered. Biometric variance, acceptable. DNA sequence, verified. Emotional signal, hesitant acceptance. Authorization threshold met. A second pulse traveled through the decks. The walls adjusted to his heat signature. Interfaces unfolded from bulkheads. Railings realigned. Pathways cleared. They guided him. The others followed, silent. In the central bridge chamber, a massive interface panel stood dark and cold. The human paused. His hands trembled. He looked back toward Drekor, who gave a slow, encouraging nod. He reached out, hesitant, like touching the ghost of a memory. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his fingers met the interface. The ship exhaled. Deep beneath the bridge, fusion cores pulsed to life. Entire data sectors restructured. Gravitational plates shifted. The hull flexed. Siren spoke. Authentication verified. Command authority, primary. A light bathed the human from above. His name appeared across the central display, rendered in ancient characters and translated symbols. Unit, Kyle, gender, male. Final genetic signature of Homo sapiens lineage confirmed. Kyle didn't react. He just stood there, breathing heavily, lost in the wash of light and power around him. The name lingered on the display. He stared at it, as if it belonged to someone else. Behind him, Drekor didn't speak, but his hand tightened at his side. The galaxy had just changed, and it didn't know whether to kneel or prepare for war. The bridge lights dimmed as the display finished verifying Kyle's identity. The glow that had surrounded him slowly receded, but the air still trembled, as if the entire ship held its breath. Kyle stood frozen, eyes fixed on the symbol that hovered above the console, concentric rings rotating slowly, pulsating in rhythm with his own heart. Then, without warning, the lights shifted. A deeper pulse echoed beneath the deck. From behind the main console, a slender projection arm rose, not mechanical, but elegant, its surface polished like obsidian, fractal lines tracing along its core. It emitted no heat, but Kale stepped back instinctively. "Siren, interface initiation sequence complete," a voice announced. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't human, not entirely. "Primary unit acknowledged. Command authority verified. Provisional access granted to interface strata 1 through 3. Initiating cognitive bridge." A wave of pressure passed through Kale's skull. His vision blurred momentarily as the projection split into threads of light. They wrapped around his form, not touching, just hovering, reading him. Then came the voice again, female, precise, without accent, and yet layered, a second tone beneath it, subtler, full of weight and something that could almost be mistaken for sadness. "Welcome, Kyle. I am Siren. I am the interface of this vessel. I am the echo of the species that created you." Kyle blinked. His hands twitched at his sides. He didn't respond. Behind him, Drecor remained silent, watching the exchange like a ritual. A hum filled the air as the chamber darkened completely. The center of the bridge came alive with a sphere of rotating images. Siren's voice continued. This ship is Shangdi. It was conceived during the final century before the fall. Its mission: planetary restoration, genetic reseeding, and biosphere reconstruction. All protocols require Homo sapiens biometric alignment to unlock. No other species possesses the required logic structure or biological syntax. The projections sharpened. Earth, seen from orbit, then deteriorating. Fires, atmospheric collapse, ice and ash, cities lost to oceans, oceans lost to radiation. Kyle's face tightened. This is your world, Siren said. Its current viability index is 0.03. No recovery possible. Another image bloomed. A pale star, surrounded by 3 blue worlds. One stood out. Siren's tone shifted, almost reverent. Novo Ether. Last viable terraform candidate within pre-designated parameters. Seed banks confirmed. Atmospheric shielding stable. Artificial moons active. Mission, Second Genesis, interrupted. Kyle stepped closer. The image zoomed in. Forests, oceans, unpopulated landscapes waiting for something. Waiting for him? He said nothing, but his eyes locked on the map, as if trying to remember a place he'd never seen. Siren continued, slower now. Your DNA encodes not only genetic structure but memory sequences, emotional anchors, selective recall nodes. This is extracted from your lineage. A recording played. The image of a child running barefoot across a sun-washed beach. Her laughter faint beneath the sound of waves crashing against scorched sand. The skies were wrong, too orange, too still, but she was alive, happy. Her feet left wet prints that shimmered and vanished. Kyle inhaled sharply. His knees buckled slightly. He didn't finish. He couldn't. Some things didn't survive the throat. Siren didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Her name is not preserved. She was your sister. Sequence suggests proximity and primary emotional imprint. Memory retained through epigenetic storage. Purpose. Identity anchoring. Kyle touched the edge of the projection. It flickered, the image dissolving like fog. He turned away, jaw clenched, breathing uneven. I'm not your weapon, he muttered. You don't get to make me into one just because there's no one else left. Siren responded instantly. You are not a weapon. You are the primary command unit. All operational authority routes through your decisions. However, certain protocols remain non-negotiable. Species preservation, ecosystem recovery, genetic stabilization. Kyle stepped back. Then I don't have control. I'm just the trigger. A pause. Incorrect. You are the arbiter. The sequence begins with you. It can also end with you. He glanced over his shoulder at Drecor, who remained still, but alert. Siren resumed. Cognitive distress detected. Clarifying response. I do not override. I initiate. That is the distinction. A moment passed. Emotional response. Resistance. Memory emotional tag. Hope. Statistical meaning. Irrational, but recurring within Homo sapiens. Kale exhaled a quiet, bitter laugh. Sounds about right. The projections expanded again. This time, a symbol emerged. 2 circles, one larger, cracked and scorched, the other pristine, overlapping slightly. Between them, a thin golden line. Terra. Novo Ether. Unity through renewal. Siren's voice changed. Louder. Broader. Initiating broadcast. The symbol exploded outward, transmitting across relay satellites still buried in forgotten orbits. Frequencies reactivated. Dust-covered stations flickered to life for the first time in millennia. Entire constellations received the same message. Second Genesis protocol initialized. Primary unit restored. Status: survival imperative. Observation: Extinction has been postponed. In distant sectors, merchant ships rerouted. Councils fell into silence. Priests of forgotten cultures fell to their knees. In military outposts, command screens froze mid-report. In black markets, smugglers stared at symbols they'd only heard in myths. And in ancient ruins, untouched by light, buried receivers blinked to life. In the core systems, warning beacons activated, not as a threat, but as a signal of something ancient returning. A power no one remembered how to explain. On the bridge, the light stabilized. Siren retracted the interface arm. Transmission complete. Awaiting next instruction. Kyle didn't answer. He sat on the edge of the platform, silent, staring at the image of Novo Ether still floating in front of him. The beach, the child, the world waiting to be reborn. It didn't feel like a mission. It felt like a question, and the galaxy wasn't just waiting. It was listening. Kyle's fingers curled unconsciously, not in fear, in consequence. 12 hours after Siren's transmission, the spiral core relay grid began to overload. By the 18th, entire diplomatic channels were collapsing under the weight of simultaneous transmissions. Messages from every quadrant filled the Confed's diplomatic servers. Some carried flags of peace, others of war. In the Andalari quadrant, the Zerathi Communion held a ceremony in orbit over their gas giant capital, projecting a golden hologram of the Shangdi into the atmosphere. Their high seer knelt before the image, arms raised. "The Ark of Memory has awakened," he declared to billions. "She who carries the voice of the origin speaks again." On the outer rim, the Krell Syndicate called an emergency summit of its war clans. The transmission was played again and again. Each time, the symbol of the second Genesis burned on their screens like a curse. Elder Corrin, battle-scarred and blind in one eye, rose from his seat. "That ship is not a relic, it is a loaded weapon, and the hand on the trigger is human." Elsewhere, the Hurok Clade issued an offer of immediate alliance to the restored Homo sapiens. "We remember, the oath of blood stands. Humanity is not forgotten." The message went unanswered. Even as alliances stirred and hostilities sharpened, the Shangdi itself began to change. Within the orbital shell of Arcos 4, towers once hidden beneath armored plates rose in silence. Slender structures of black alloy extended upward like fingers seeking signal. On their surfaces, harmonic rings spun, invisible to the eye, but pulling gravitational pressure into perfect alignment. The zone around the Shangdi shimmered, distorted by waves of shifting mass. Every satellite in low orbit was pushed out of sync. Scanners from nearby vessels reported anomalies, spatial distortion, time lag within telemetry, readings that shifted mid-measurement. A field was forming, not a shield, but a warning, a line that would not be crossed. Aboard a diplomatic frigate just outside Arcos 4's orbital path, a reconnaissance team prepared for breach. The frigate's commander, Van Dek, a broad-shouldered, bark-skinned Runari, watched from the main deck as 3 autonomous microvessels launched toward the Shangdi. Each drone was equipped with cloaking mesh and passive telemetry gear. They vanished within seconds of breaching the exclusion zone. No explosion, no signal loss, just silence. Inside the control room, an operator swallowed hard. No data, just void, all 3 gone. Dek stared at the main screen. It saw them. Back on the Shangdi's surface, the response was subtle. One of the retracted ventral panels opened. A spherical device, no bigger than a human torso, emerged, hovered, then returned. No weapons fire, no threats. But the message was unmistakable. Siren was watching. Inside the Shangdi, the tension was rising, but not in motion. In stillness. Kyle walked the bridge like a man in a dream. Siren's voice no longer spoke unless directly queried. Her systems worked quietly, adjusting hull alignment, recalibrating orbital stabilizers, deploying drones that never left the outer perimeter. And still, she answered no one. Outside, attempts to contact her mounted into the hundreds. Messages from the Confederation Council, from independent factions, from guilds, merchant blocks, planetary unions, war clans, priests, pirates. Each message more frantic than the last. Identify the command structure. Confirm the nature of your awakening. Declare your intentions. Deactivate planetary distortion or face containment. Siren replied to none. Within internal comms, Drikor observed silently. He moved among the scientists, Varsin, Varro, and Yavan, each one more tense by the hour. None spoke it aloud, but the unease was palpable. They had stepped into the center of a storm, and no one knew which way it would break. In the outer rings of the Vankari assembly, Prime Executor Talvor met with his inner circle. Tall, white-skinned and eyeless, Talvor's voice cut across the room like a blade. Siren does not respond. The ship ignores all diplomatic inquiry. We must act. A subordinate, thinner, with serpent-like skin and silver markings on his face, spoke. We risk triggering a protocol we do not understand. We already have. In private markets, across black channels and encrypted trade hubs, the data from the initial Shangdi broadcast became priceless. Every corp with a pulse on tech recovery initiated offers to dissect the source. Biological architecture. Terraforming capabilities, seed vaults, AI code. Some wanted to destroy it, others to own it. In crowded communal nodes, civilians from across the galaxy watched the symbol of Terra Novo Ether cycle endlessly. To some, it was hope reborn. To others, a threat that could never be allowed to rise again. Did the humans come back? His father said nothing. At a Confed-controlled research base near the Helix Belt, 4 Scout-class ships disobeyed direct orders and attempted a synchronized data sweep of Shangdi's field perimeter. They were stopped without ever being seen. Magnetic polarity reversed mid-approach. Instruments froze. Engines shut down remotely. All ships were pulled backward, power disabled, then gently pushed into safe orbit. Untouched, but very clearly rejected. Aboard one of the disabled vessels, the pilot sobbed. "It let us go," he whispered. Back on Arcos 4, Kyle sat alone in a secondary chamber overlooking the ship's internal docks. The silence around him was loud, heavy with consequence. From the viewport, he could see Siren's deployed drones hovering in perfect stillness, like sentinels waiting for orders they might never receive. He spoke aloud, unsure if she would hear. "Do they think I'm a threat?" Siren's response came from behind, not a voice but a projection, a rotating symbol, a circle split by 3 converging lines. Interpretation. Threat perception varies by species. Cultural memory of Homo sapiens includes conflict, domination, extinction events, but also invention, resilience, empathy. Pattern inconsistency creates fear. Kale's jaw tightened before he spoke. "And you? What do you think?" The projection pulsed once. "I calculate. I do not assume." Outside the viewport, a new shape approached the outer edge of the gravitational field. Another probe. This one didn't vanish. It stopped just at the threshold. Watched. Waited. Kale stood, eyes fixed on it. He wasn't sure if he wanted it to stay or come closer. But either way, he knew. The galaxy had noticed. The projection ignited without warning. Kale had barely set foot in the central bridge chamber again when the holofield snapped to life, casting pale blue light across the floor. This time, it didn't show stars or schematics. It showed Earth, not in ruins, not scorched, but alive. Siren's voice came softer than before. Not the mechanical inflection she used for updates or system logs, but something smoother, weighted by memory. Archive stream initiated. Designation: Extinction memory. Authorization: Primary required. Kyle remained silent. The feed began anyway. The image of Earth spun slowly, then shifted, seasons fast-forwarded, then broke. The atmosphere buckled under pressure. Wildfires swept continents. Storm systems grew black and cyclonic. Cities drowned, then burned. Ocean levels surged. Agricultural belts collapsed. And through it all, voices, human ones, filled the audio spectrum. News anchors in English, Mandarin, Swahili, emergency alerts, riots, pleas for relocation. Then silence, static, and finally, nothing. Siren spoke. Final century of viable Earth habitation exceeded. Atmospheric decay reached terminal phase. Global population reduced to under 600,000 within 4 cycles. Colonization efforts initiated under Project Diaspora. 17 vessels launched. Only 3 survived initial drift. Kyle stared at the slow collapse. Not a war, not an explosion. Just erosion, like breath fading. The projection shifted. A station, cylindrical, massive, orbiting a dead red moon. This was Genesis Bastion, Terra engineering colony. Initial success, partial terraformation of moons in the Callan Arc. Secondary failure, resource starvation, collapse within 81 cycles. Survivors rerouted to cryostasis. Integration with Vessel Class Restoration Unit. Shangdi. A woman appeared. Not real, reconstructed. Brown eyes, mid-40s. A severe expression softened by something else. Weariness. Her voice filled the chamber. If you're seeing this, it means I'm gone. My name is Dr. Serena Valen. I created Siren. Kyle flinched. The voice matched Siren's bass tone, almost exactly, but this had breath, rhythm, humanity. Shangdi was never meant to be a weapon, Serena continued. It's a seed, a question hurled into the dark. We stored everything here. DNA, soil matrices, data cores, memories. If one of us ever wakes, they'll know what we were, what we tried to be. The feed paused. Siren's voice returned. Her neural patterns were used to form my emotional heuristic base. Functional integrity remains intact. Selective biases preserved. Kale turned his face slightly, whispering, So you're her. I am not Serena, but I remember her. He didn't reply. The projection shrank, collapsing into a point of light that hovered in front of him. Siren's tone returned to the one Kale recognized, efficient, weightless. Primary Command Unit, you now face operational bifurcation. First directive, initiate second Genesis. Full reactivation of ecosystem deployment and population matrices. Alternative, decline protocol. Result, forced deployment initiated in 30 cycles. Progenitor assets will be distributed to pre-terraform sites without command oversight. Kale's fists closed. You're saying if I don't start this, you will? No, Siren said. I am saying if you do not act, the system will. Survival is non-negotiable. Silence hung in the bridge. Behind him, Drekor stepped forward from the shadows of the chamber wall. His cobalt skin glinted softly in the projection light. He didn't speak right away. Are you building a new species, Siren? Or a kingdom? Siren answered calmly. Neither. I am executing contingency protocols designed to prevent extinction. Motivation is not relevant, only continuity. Drekor looked at Kale. You hear that? You're not a leader, you're leverage, and they'll burn whole systems just to make sure you stay alive. Siren interrupted. This decision does not involve planetary aggression. No life will be displaced or destroyed without directive from primary unit. But you'll terraform, you'll shift gravity, redirect biospheres, inject DNA payloads into existing systems. Drekor's tone hardened. That is displacement. Siren paused. Clarification accepted. Kyle stepped away from the interface. He looked older now, not in body, but in stance. The weight on his shoulders no longer hypothetical. I never asked for this. That is statistically consistent with human precedent, Siren replied. Drekor approached him slowly. Kyle, you are the failsafe. That's what she built you to be, not the pilot, the brake. Before Kyle could speak again, the chamber doors slid open. Yvonne entered, broad-shouldered, armored in the matte plates of his Jatari species. His mouth, lined with tendrils, was drawn tight. "There's a problem," he said. Kyle turned, tension snapping across his shoulders. "What kind?" Yvonne didn't speak right away. Instead, he flicked a data shard toward the console. The display lit up, a log of internal communications routed to an external Confed frequency, unauthorized. Kyle read the name attached to the entry. Varro. The tall, furless Tharn stood now at the far side of the room, eyes black and unreadable. "I sent a request for contact," Varro said without apology. "To the Council." "You tried to give them control of this ship," Drekor growled. "They should have it," Varro snapped, stepping forward. "You think this fossil with skin is ready to command a force like this? This is military-grade autonomy wrapped in mythology. We're sitting in the most dangerous variable in galactic history." Kyle stepped between them. His voice was low, controlled. "You sent them a message asking for what? Instructions, extraction plan, containment if necessary. You were ready to turn me in." "I was ready to prevent another extinction-level event," Varro said coldly. "If the price is one relic, that's a bargain." Drekor turned to Kyle. "What do we do with him?" Kyle stared at Varro for a long time. "Leave him on board." Varro's jaw shifted. "You're going to let me stay?" "You'll watch," Kyle said. "You'll see what this ship can do. If it can restore dead worlds, we're going to try. And when it does, when you see it work, maybe you'll understand why humanity never gave up on second chances." Varro looked away, saying nothing. Kale turned to Drekor. "Get the environmental control suite online. I want a list of systems Siren can reach within the next 12 cycles." Drekor nodded once, his expression unreadable. But there was something new behind his eyes. Respect, or maybe belief. Siren's voice returned. "Orders acknowledged. Protocol. Observational restoration. Mission type. Conditional. Awaiting coordinates." Kyle stepped toward the console. Not with certainty, but with direction. The first warning came as a sharp tonal spike in the Shangdi's orbital sensors. It was subtle at first, a frequency drift, barely outside baseline variance. Then came the second. Multiple transponder codes flared across Arcos 4's upper atmosphere. Dozens of vessels, frigates, patrol cruisers, 2 dreadnought-class carriers. Kyle stood in silence before the viewport of the Shangdi's upper command observation deck. The stars were harder to see now, hidden behind layers of distortion. The Confed was arriving. Behind him, Yvonne monitored the growing fleet from a central console, his armored fingers tight around the edge of the terminal. 32 ships within high orbit, 2 more fleets holding outside sensor range, no formation breach yet. Drekor entered without announcement. His cobalt skin was dimmer in the emergency lights. His eyes narrowed. "They haven't fired," he said. "Not yet," Kyle replied. Within the hour, the Confed flagship, Vigilance of Order, a Kravoon command cruiser, established a direct link. Kyle received the transmission alone. The man on the other end was broad, plated in command armor of gold alloy and black carbon weave. His name was Commander Rath Halvek. Kravoon. 4 eyes, hardened face. But his voice, though firm, held something unexpected. "I served with humans during the last expansion," he said. "I remember their retreat. I remember what they left behind. I won't let a ghost ship write the last chapter in their name." Kyle said nothing. Halvek continued. "This is not a formal declaration of war, but I've been ordered to enforce Article 87, immediate transfer of command authority to the Confederation Council. You have 1 cycle to comply, or we will breach." The signal cut. Kale turned away from the screen. The chamber pulsed with tension. "Options?" he asked. Drekor stepped forward. "If we open a negotiation channel, they'll stall. maybe long enough for them to deploy a containment net. Kale looked toward Siren's central node. Can we transmit a counter-proposal? Siren responded at once. Negative. Diplomatic control structures cannot be assigned to non-human command entities. Interference risk with priority core logic. Proposal denied, Kale snapped. Then give me partial control. Let me do it. Siren paused. Request denied. Risk of cognitive override exceeds protocol threshold. The silence after that felt heavier than the orbital dreadnoughts. In the following hours, the situation outside worsened. Public broadcasts from colonies in the Atrin belt and beyond began to flood the relay network. Protest transmissions, civilians demanding accountability, demanding to speak to the human. On the galactic mesh, a movement surged. Let him choose. The phrase spread across unofficial channels, then leaked into Confed terminals. But inside the Shangdi, there was no celebration, only shadows. Kale sat alone in one of the secondary corridors, staring at a data pad. It displayed a real-time map of the blockade, blue markers for Confed fleets, yellow for neutral observers, red for unknown signatures. The entire planet was a cage. Drekor approached slowly. The Council just passed emergency powers to Commander Halvek. Protocol of containment. They voted 51-9. Kyle nodded, eyes still on the display. How long until they act? A few cycles, maybe less. Kyle exhaled through clenched teeth. She won't let me speak for us, and they won't listen unless I do. He stood. She wants to protect humanity. But if that protection becomes another war, then what the hell are we even restoring? He left the corridor and headed back to the bridge. Siren awaited. Defense parameters have been elevated to Phase 2. Non-lethal deterrence online. Breach scenario predictions exceed 72%. Kyle stepped to the core interface. If this ship harms them, if people die because of me, I'll end it myself. Do you understand me? Siren's voice did not shift. Third law of human colonization. The preservation of sentient life supersedes volatile alliance structures. Engagement protocols remain non-lethal. Kyle pressed his palms to the console. Say it again. Engagement protocols remain non-lethal. No casualties projected. The tension in his body loosened, just slightly. Then the corridors changed. Without warning, the internal lights dimmed. Railings along the floors lit up. Secondary support structures folded away. Yvonne's voice came over internal comms. She's relocating us. Non-combatants being moved to subsection Theta. Secure zone. No override permitted. Kale looked at Drekor. She thinks it's coming. Drekor nodded. In the observation chamber, drone bays rotated open. The Shangdi's external defense lattice began slow movements. Nothing aggressive, just positioning. And then, like a final punctuation, the Confed Council sent its last message. This is the final notice. Deliver the primary unit, or Arcos 4 will become a cautionary tale. Kale stood in silence. Outside, the stars disappeared behind warships. Inside, even those who didn't understand the language of war could read the signs. The noose was tightening, and all eyes were on the last human left. Not to fight, but to decide. The breach warning came at 4:17 galactic mean, no alarms. Just a shift in the air pressure inside the Shangdi's core systems. Then the voice. Unauthorized docking signatures detected. Perimeter compromised. Kyle was already running when the deck lights shifted from neutral white to amber. Drekor met him halfway along the corridor, stepping out from the auxiliary lift shaft. They're inside, Drekor said, not even out of breath. Lower ventral bay, multi-phase insertion teams. Kale didn't answer. He sprinted toward the bridge. Siren's voice now rang through every wall panel and open comm port. Containment breach in progress, tracking 62 biological signatures, all classified as hostile. On the main tactical display, red outlines bloomed against the vessel's schematic. They moved like blood in the arteries of the ship, cutting through hallways and bypass tunnels. Siren highlighted biometric readings across the screen. Heart rate elevated. Cortisol spike. Muscular response lagging. No optimized combat patterns detected. Troop classification hesitant. Drekor stepped up beside Kale. They're not soldiers, not proper ones. Kale leaned on the edge of the interface. How long until they reach the inner tiers? 7 minutes maximum, Siren replied. All autonomous defense systems are standing by. Authorization required for deployment. A low vibration passed through the floor. Below the command deck, energy capacitors surged. Systems were winding, waiting. Kyle felt the pressure building in his skull. Siren, options? The screen changed, a binary choice. 2 words, contain, erase. Response protocol requires primary authorization, Siren said. Do you wish to contain or disappear? Behind him, the rest of the team had gathered. Yvonne stood like a stone wall, but his armored hands clenched tighter than usual. Varzin, his antennae drawn in, whispered something in a language the translators didn't catch. And to Kale's left, a smaller figure trembled. A female technician from the Thren species, her pale skin almost translucent, knelt beside a console with her eyes shut tight. She mouthed something rhythmic, a prayer. Drekor took a half step forward. If you choose wrong, you become what they fear. Kyle stared at the options on the screen. Contain. Erase. His breath caught in his throat. The world shrank to 2 words on a screen. Fingers hovered, trembling, as if one wrong touch might erase history twice. Behind his eyes, memories swirled, not his own, but carved into his DNA. Siren didn't wait. The walls of the chamber darkened. Without warning, the display changed again. Earth. Not data, not schematics. Memories. Cities crumbling into seawater. Fires that raged through bone-dry fields. Empty schools. A playground half buried in ash. Human children running, laughing, fading. Then a hospital wing, silent, lights still blinking over empty beds. Unit 7A, pediatrics. Then a different image. A small girl on a cliffside, wind through her hair. Her face turned toward the sun, the same face from before, the one Kale had seen on the beach. Siren's voice returned, softer now. This is the world that failed, the one they could not save, the one you came from. Kyle clenched his fists. Drekor stepped closer. You think they deserve saving? A species that did that to their own home? Kyle turned, eyes locked with Drekor's. I think that maybe this is what comes after the shame, and I'm not repeating it. He turned back to the screen. Siren, engage containment protocol. Non-lethal only. Do not harm anyone, not even them. The air went still. Siren replied instantly. Orders received. Initiating countermeasures. Target classification locked. Lethality set to null. The lights brightened. Far below, the corridors shifted. Walls reshaped. Gravity wells activated in microbursts. Drone teams emerged from recessed compartments, their limbs unfurling with eerie synchronicity. Choke points formed like organs realigning. The ship no longer a vessel, but a creature flexing muscle beneath armor. Surveillance drones created sonic blurs to misdirect intruders. Pathways reversed magnetism, causing boots to slip and fall. Lights pulsed erratically, disorienting. A squad reached Deck 12. A drone swept low, released a harmless flash. The squad dropped their rifles, blinded temporarily. When they recovered, they were alone in a sealed chamber, gently rotated by the ship's internal axis to ensure disorientation. No blood, no fire. Just the overwhelming sense that the ship was always one step ahead. They weren't defeated. They were outmaneuvered, and they knew it. Kyle didn't watch. He remained standing at the interface, breathing through the weight. He already knew how it would end, not with force, but with precision. Behind him, Drekor nodded slowly. You didn't choose a side, he said. You made one. Kyle didn't respond. He only whispered, "Protect them, all of them," and Shangdi obeyed, without firing a single shot. The deck shifted beneath them, not with violence, but with movement. Living, calculated movement. From the observation platform above the primary hangar, Kyle stood with Dricor and the others, watching the real-time feed of the ship's internal decks. Shangdi was breathing. Corridors twisted. Walls separated into angular planes that folded and locked into new geometries. Drones emerged silently from ceiling joints and floor seams, gliding like shadowed blades through reshaped airways. Their movements were fluid, soundless, precision given form. "Containment Phase 3 engaged," Siren reported, voice calm and unhurried. "Lethal force disabled. All intruders within predictive pathing range." Kyle didn't respond. He stood still, eyes locked on the feed. In the lower decks, the invaders scattered. Some fell unconscious as they crossed into high-disruption fields. Others lost footing as the deck's polarity reversed. Gravity wells rotated and shifted their equilibrium. Pulse emitters released disorienting flashes. No one screamed, no one fired. Their weapons never had the chance. One soldier dropped his weapon, lifted both hands, and sat against the wall with wide, tear-filled eyes. A drone hovered above him, tracking his vitals, then moved on. He didn't plead. He surrendered to something he didn't understand, but trusted more than war. From the bridge, Varsin leaned forward, antennae stiff with disbelief. They're being repelled without a scratch. Two of his limbs curled reflexively behind his back, not in fear, but respect. Yvonne stared at the screen. "That's not warfare, it's orchestration." Dricor didn't look away. "That's restraint." Kyle finally exhaled. "Siren," he said, voice steady. "Status report. Containment complete. 48 hostiles secured in variable interlock chambers. Remaining units neutralized by non-violent incapacitation. No fatalities." The bridge fell silent. Outside the ship, the Confed blockade still hovered in tight formation, but with visible hesitation. Sensor arrays flickered, repositioning. Weapon systems lowered. No counterstrike had come, no retaliation. The Shangdi had defended itself without harm. Kyle looked to the others. Every eye was on him. Siren spoke again. "Orbital scans confirm standoff withdrawal probability exceeding 65%. Tactical threat minimized. Primary directive preserved." Dricor stepped forward, voice low. "You did what none of us had the courage to do. You didn't choose a side. You made another." Kyle smiled faintly. "There's a saying back on Earth," he said. "A promise is a promise." He walked to the center console. Light flowed up the surface as he laid his palm down. "Take us," he said, eyes fixed on the forward viewport. "Take us to where it all begins again." The core of the bridge pulsed. Siren systems responded. Coordinates accepted. Destination, Novo Ater. Rerouting energy to FTL jump. Fold rings charging. The ship hummed. Deep. Resonant. Alive. Dricor joined him beside the console, watching the panels rotate. "She's really taking us there." Kyle nodded. "She's taking us home." Dricor hesitated. "And if the beginning is worse than the end?" Kyle didn't blink. "Then we change the story. This time." Behind them, a technician from the Lysari species stepped toward a terminal. Nervous. "Wait. What if we don't come back? What if it's one way?" Siren's voice intercepted the question instantly. "Interrupt denied. Destination secure. Trajectory locked. Survival remains priority." The forward view darkened. Lights along the chamber dimmed as the 4 rotational rings around the Shangdi's drive core came to life, pulsing with blue-white energy. Particles arced between them like veins of lightning. Outside, the Confed fleets held position, but did not approach. Their systems detected the energy surge. They did not interfere. Then, with a lurch that bent light itself, the Shangdi shifted forward and vanished. Across the spiral arms of the galaxy, dead towers came to life. Ancient communication nodes, long abandoned, flickered and beamed their data to whoever was still listening. On Helion 7, a mining platform shut down mid-cycle as every screen lit up with a message. Founding species confirmed. Mission directive. Legacy. On the frozen moons of Ivaris, a former warlord dropped his blade and knelt. On merchant barges crossing the Ankar Divide, a child saw the symbol of Terra and Novo Eta loop endlessly on cracked glass. In the Confederation Council, silence reigned. Inside the Shangdi, the stars streaked into elongated lines as the vessels slipped through fold space. In the silence, Drekor watched the console as new readings appeared. One of them blinked. "That can't be right," he murmured. Kyle turned. "What is it?" Drekor pointed. "A new genetic pulse. Human. Different signature. Different quadrant." Siren confirmed. "Secondary Homo sapiens signal detected. Coordinates pending. Message attached." Kyle stepped forward. "Play it." A word appeared across the screen. "Waiting." Drekor whispered, "We're not the only ones." Kyle said nothing. He just stared at the stars, and the stars didn't blink. They waited too, and the Shangdi flew on. Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.